The Kansas City Chiefs have had some trouble with the offensive line in the Mahomes era, and a big part of that has been the offensive tackle positions because there was a little bit of roster rot heading into the Mahomes era simply because of the fact that the Chiefs were decent for so long that it was difficult to get their hands on high-end tackles. The last high-end tackle that they drafted was Eric Fisher when they had the number one overall pick. Now, in the Mahomes era, the Kansas City Chiefs are highly unlikely to have the number one overall pick. And so this problem that was starting to roil under the surface for the Kansas City Chiefs came to a head allegedly in a Super Bowl that I don't remember ever having taken place between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tom Brady somethings. I don't remember that game, but apparently the offensive line was very, very bad. However, the Kansas City Chiefs have tried to rebuild the offensive line in the meantime, having some success, but still, there's a little bit of a difficulty getting your hands on high-end tackles when you're not drafting in the upper part of the first round. This video, we're going to talk a little bit about the youth movement across the offensive line. Now, there are some vids on the way here as well. The Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel. So if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around because I've got a video on Veach being a buyer at the cut down day, a 7-round mock draft, a practice squad rundown, and a rundown on the 53-man roster from the defensive side of the ball. I've already got a rundown from the offensive side of the ball. In the videos that were posted yesterday were Bailey Zappi signed and Marlon Tuipulotu signed. Let's get in to the youth movement on the line for the Kansas City Chiefs in an article from Arrowhead Pride with which I will scaffold the commentary in this video. We learned some things from Ron Kopp. The article in question is titled, Brett Veach testifies for 4 rookie offensive linemen on the Chiefs roster, subtitled, Kansas City's general manager trusts his coaching staff to get the most out of unproven players. And once again, this is by Ron Kopp. This is how we start the article. Everything highlighted in yellow is from Ron Kopp. Everything highlighted in turquoise is from Brett Veach. Once the Kansas City Chiefs' initial 53-man roster was revealed on Tuesday evening, it probably wasn't surprising that the team had kept 10 offensive linemen, but you might not have expected that 4 of them would be rookies. You would have if you were around here, huh? While we always knew starting left tackle Kingsley Suamataia would make the roster, the other 3 rookies joined him on the initial roster. 5th-round pick Hunter Nourzad, 7th-round selection CJ Hansen, and undrafted free agent Ethan Driscoll. These rookies made enough of an impression that veteran offensive tackle Lucas Niang was forced off the roster, although the team had signed him to its practice squad. Now, possibly the most impressive thing about this article, and I do not mean to poke fun, but possibly the most impressive thing about this article is the fact that there was not in this article a single quote from Brett Veach about Kingsley Suamataia. So I did go out and find one, but it's from a different article, and I have it highlighted in yellow here. Now, Kingsley Suamataia, who is Kingsley Suamataia? He was the 2nd-round pick for the Kansas City Chiefs out of BYU. He goes 6'4" and 5/8", nearly 6 foot 5 inches tall, a hefty 326 pounds. That's a big offensive lineman. That's a big tackle. 34 and 1/4 inch arms. That is a great arm length for an offensive lineman, especially a tackle. 10 and 5/8 inch hands. That is in the ideal range for your hand. 5.04 40-yard dash. Great number for Kingsley. And he's shown that speed on the field. A 28-inch vert and 31 reps. Now, impressively, those 31 reps were done on 34 and 1/4 inch arms, 31 reps of bench press with 225 pounds, if you're not familiar with what that is in reference to. Now, From an article titled Bret Veach Values the Versatility Chiefs' Three Other Offensive Linemen Offer by Jared Sapp, we do get a quote from Bret Veach. So technically, I think I highlighted this in the wrong color. We get a quote from Bret Veach on Kingsley Suamataia where he said, quote, "We had him up there, obviously really high. You have to be prepared for all types of scenarios, depending on how the draft unfolded. I think we had a pretty good indication of the number of quarterbacks this year and the other offensive linemen that'd be there, that there'd be a chance a player like Xavier may slide to where we picked. But Suamataia was certainly in one of those top 25 to 40 considerations. He was a consideration at 32, and he was potentially a consideration had we traded down. To have the draft unfold like it did and be able to select him at 63, we feel very fortunate and lucky." Veach confirmed that as of now, Suamataia will compete with second-year pro Wanya Moore as the left tackle. This article is a little bit old. He played both right and tackle. Veach noted of Suamataia's readiness. "I think plans are to throw him in at left tackle and let him compete and battle with Wanya, and we'll see how it goes. We certainly liked some of the things we saw out of Wanya last year. It was our job to bring in competition, and I think those guys will be excited to compete with one another, and I look forward to the battle at training camp. Know that Kingsley has played on the right side too, so I think there's a lot of versatility and value there." It is worth noting that on last year's team, starting right tackle Jawan Taylor played 1,076 reps. Starting left tackle Donovan Smith played only 749, but he was injured for a few games. That gave Wanya Morris 339 starting left tackle reps in his absence. It is likely, with Kingsley Suamataia taking the starting spot at the left tackle position for the Kansas City Chiefs, that the bottom line is he's going to play over 1,000 reps for the Kansas City Chiefs as a rookie, so long as he is healthy and so long as he holds up in the way that he did during the preseason. Are there warts in his game? Indeed, there are. He is a young offensive lineman playing left tackle in the NFL against defenses who are going to be key on disrupting Patrick Mahomes. These defenses are going to want nothing more than to throw off Patrick Mahomes because that's the easiest way they're going to think to stop him. We know what he does against the rush, against the blitz. It's not going to matter. They're going to see a starting left tackle rookie, a rookie starting at left tackle as an opportunity to go after Patrick Mahomes. The bottom line with Kingsley Suamataia, his floor, in my opinion, is swing tackle. He's not an NFL guy. 100% he is an NFL player. His ceiling, I would say, is top 8, top 10 offensive left tackle in the league. I don't know if he gets into that rare top 5, top 3 stratosphere. I don't think those are things that you can just kind of project. But looking at his tools, looking at his weight, looking at his movement skills, looking at his length, all of these things, he's got a little bit of footwork stuff to work on. I think that his hand placement needs to get better. If he can improve those things, and he can improve those things, whether or not he will is yet to be seen, he could be a top 8, top 10 left tackle in the NFL. That's where Kingsley Suamataia is, in my opinion. Moving on, Hunter Nourzad, the second of these four horsemen. 6'3" and 1/8 inches tall, 317 pounds, so a stouter kind of offensive lineman. 33 and 1/8 inch arms. He has 10 and 3/4 inch hands, and so big hands, lots of reps on the bench press, 27 reps. This is from the article letting us know that, Hunter Nourzad also made a strong case for the team by demonstrating his versatility, taking 53 snaps at center during the preseason, 37 snaps at left guard, and 22 snaps at right guard over those 3 games. Brett Veach said of him, his versatility stands out, noted Veach. Hunter Nourzad is a guy that is maybe best suited to play center, but can give guard flexibility. It is a little bit, I won't say upsetting, but off-putting to see that the Kansas City Chiefs just signed Creed Humphrey to $72 million, resetting the market at offensive center if you thought you had another guy on the roster. But I think what that concession is that they don't believe Hunter Nourzad has the ceiling at center that Creed Humphrey does. But there has also been some talk that Creed Humphrey might be an offensive guard, might flex out to guard for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know that I necessarily have ever seen him look like an offensive guard. I think that the 2 positions, guard and center, are a little more different than a lot of people like to concede. And if you have a guy who can play center, you want him playing center. That said, when you look at 6'3", 317 pounds, 10 3/4 inch hands, 27 reps on the bench press, Hunter Nourzad can play offensive guard. I thought that the trouble followed him a little bit in the preseason. Whoever it was that he was lined up next to, Chuck Godric or Mike Caliendo, seemed to struggle. I thought that was maybe an indication that Hunter Nourzad was not communicating effectively or not picking up the right assignment. The article in question seems to think that was not the case, saying that he did not give up a single pressure, I believe they said, over the last 2 preseason games of the season. The bottom line, in my opinion, on Hunter Nourzad, the bottom line, the worst case scenario for Hunter Nourzad is he is a reserve offensive lineman. I think that could still be his fate. I don't know that we have seen anything say definitely it isn't. However, if you're willing to listen to football guys, cut from the cloth football guys, they all seem to absolutely love Hunter Nourzad. I'm willing to take their opinion on Hunter Nourzad and say that he could be a Pro Bowl guard/center. I don't know that I necessarily see that. I see a guy who is I see a guy who can definitely start. I see a guy who can be a positive on the offensive line. Enough guys absolutely love Hunter Nourzad that I'm willing to just concede I must be wrong. If Hunter Nourzad offers you Pro Bowl guard potential next to Creed Humphrey, that says a lot. We have already heard that Brett Veach is trying to work on a deal for both Trey Smith and Nick Bolton. He mentioned them in that order, and he mentioned Creed Humphrey first, so it seems that may have been a Freudian slip over his, Brett Veach's, actual analysis on who needs to be signed first, second, and third. If that is the case, Hunter Nourzad will stick around long enough, hopefully, to end up being the guy that replaces Joe Thuney. But even that leaves us with a little bit of consideration for the next guy on this list, because I think he has a higher ceiling even than Hunter Nourzad. My opinion, not anybody else that I've seen. CJ Hansen, the 7th round pick out of Holy Cross, 6'5", 300 pounds, 32 3/8 inch arms. He has 9 3/8 inch hands, 33 inch vertical, 9 7 inch broad jump, and did 25 reps on the bench press. He is a very fluid athlete for a guy who's around 300 pounds. I still think there's an outside shot that he gets looks at offensive tackle. Brett Veach did not seem to think that. As we get from the article, Hansen, however, did not show quite as much versatility. He got 94 reps at right guard and 55 at left guard, allowing 4 pressures, including a quarterback hit, during the preseason. The quote we get from Brett Veach on CJ Hansen is this: Hansen needs some time, acknowledged Veach, but I think he's more suited to play center as well. I do think he has a lot of room to grow. He's super athletic. I think he just needs to get a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. Now, with Andy Reid as the coach, this is going to be the thing that stops him from getting looks at offensive tackle. Sub 33-inch arms, sub 32.5-inch arms. I think that there are plenty of guys in the NFL who play offensive tackle. Here's the ceiling, in my opinion, on CJ Hansen is a shade below Joe Thuney. In my opinion, the ceiling on CJ Hansen is a shade below Joe Thuney. That said, the floor on CJ Hansen is that he is not an NFL guy. From what we have seen thus far, I think there is still a chance that he is not an NFL guy. He gave up some pressure in the preseason. He does not have the functional strength that is necessary to dominate in the NFL. Maybe not the functional strength necessary to play in the NFL, especially when you're going up against 340-pound defensive nose guards and defensive tackles right in your face, as will be the case for a starting offensive guard in the NFL. So this is, CJ Hansen has, in my opinion, the widest split of potential, right? I think that his upside is just shy of Joe Thuney. He probably never going to be Joe Thuney, but I think he has in the same neighborhood as Joe Thuney potential. His floor is not an NFL player. I don't know where we're closer to right now. That said, guys, if all 3 of these individuals are closer to their ceiling than their floor, they don't have to hit their ceiling. If they're just closer to their ceiling than their floor, these are 3 good ones. Then we have Ethan Driscoll, the wild card, the absolute boon of this offensive line class. You do not expect to get offensive linemen who can play in the NFL as UDFA, and when you do, you should be very, very thankful for it. Ethan Driscoll goes, 6'8" and 1/3 inches tall. That's a monster. That is an absolute monster. 6'8", 1/3 inches tall. That's a big guy. 313 pounds, not as impressive. 35 3/8 inch arms, once again, very impressive. So 10.5 inch hands, kind of average. Now, here's what I'm going to say about this. Before we get into what he did in the preseason, before we get into Brett Veach's quote on him, it may seem a moot point to talk about a UDFA offensive tackle, a guy that has not played a single down in the NFL. Here is what I will remind you. In 2017, there was an offensive lineman who entered the league from Eastern Michigan. He entered the league as a UDFA. He was 6'6", 309 pounds, so shorter than Ethan Driscoll and even a little bit lighter. He entered the NFL as a UDFA for the Indianapolis Colts, didn't spend much time there. Cleveland Browns, didn't spend much time there. Los Angeles Chargers did not spend much time there. He was an Indianapolis Colt from September 2nd to September 26th, or May 15th, to September 26th, signed right after the draft. He was a Cleveland Brown from October 9th to December 15th. He was a Los Angeles Charger from December 19th to 8 days afterward. After that, Ethan Driscoll, Andrew Wiley signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, and the rest is history. Started in a Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs as an undrafted offensive tackle. The article tells us as camp began, Driscoll was rotating in with the third-team offensive line, but now he's a legitimate candidate to be the team's swing tackle of the future. In the preseason, he registered 83 snaps at left tackle and 44 at right tackle. And the quote that we have from Brett Veach is the most extensive for any player thus far. Driscoll is just one of those type of players that has rare physical traits, observed Veach. He's a big guy that is athletic. Again, like Hansen, there will be some anchoring issues and there will be some weight issues early on. He was a guy that was maybe rough the first preseason game, but then he got a little bit better. You can see him grow and have more confidence at practice. We bring a player in and we work with him, develop him, go through the rough patches with him, and then all of a sudden you have to break free on the waiver wire. Someone's getting a young player on a rookie contract with a ton of work that we put into it, explained the GM. There's always that desire to see it through to the end, and Coach Heck has done this with many players. In my opinion, the bottom line on Ethan Driscoll, his floor is that he's not an NFL player. We haven't seen enough to say that he is definitely an NFL guy. He is definitely a roster guy. He is definitely a backup tackle, a swing tackle, etc. In my opinion, his ceiling is starting right tackle. I don't think you want him at left tackle. I think that his footwork is maybe too bad for that. And I don't think he has the tools necessary to rebound from having a couple bad steps the way that Kingsley Suamataia does. This could be a starting right tackle in the NFL. Ethan Driscoll as a UDFA, we have seen great things from him in the preseason. We saw him 40 yards downfield next to Deneric Prince on a breakaway run, and that is what this guy can do. Here's the bottom line of bottom lines for me with this rookie class of offensive linemen. This class is very reminiscent of the 2022 defensive back class. Trent McDuffie in the first is a bona fide star. In my opinion, that's kind of like Kingsley Suamataia. He's going to be a star on the offensive line. The mid-round guy in Joshua Williams, who is likely to be a starter and has lots of measurables, is the same as Hunter Nourzad, a mid-round guy who has some measurables and is likely to be a starter. The late-round guy who is very athletic and has a bootstrap background in Jalen Watson. Jalen Watson, remember, was out of football for a little while working at Burger King or Wendy's. That's the same as C.J. Hansen. C.J. Hansen comes from Holy Cross. Not a whole lot of draft picks come through Holy Cross. And the final guy who was a very, very late addition to the class and may be slower to get on the field, like Najee Johnson, is the same as Ethan Driscoll. And the implications of this are probably obvious by now. The secondary for the Chiefs has turned into a massive strength for this team. Brett Veach has been willing to plug in additional picks to that defensive backfield, sign in a free agent here and there. But really, it has been about pushing the talent to the top. Having enough guys who can play that eventually someone decides they want to. If you are the guy among tons of players that can play and you decide, look, I'm just going to take it into my own hands, I am going to create playing time for myself. That dynamic exists at defensive back for the Kansas City Chiefs. If at any time And by any time, I mean any time. If at any time the offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs ends up being a top 3 unit in the NFL, a top to bottom, top 3 type unit in the NFL, it is an automatic Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is too good to get 4 and 5 seconds to stand behind the line and pick apart a defense. No matter who the wide receivers or running backs are, no matter what kind of points the defense might be giving up, if the Kansas City Chiefs have a legitimate top 3 line in the NFL, top to bottom, top 3 line in the NFL, it is an automatic Super Bowl bid. I'm not going to say it's a Super Bowl victory. You never know what's going to happen. But if they have one of those top tier, bulletproof offensive lines, it means absolute trouble for the rest of the NFL. And the interesting, maybe most interesting part about this is that the Kansas City Chiefs seem convinced that they're going to do it through the draft. Drafted Creed Humphrey, drafted Trey Smith, drafted Kingsley Suamataia, drafted Wanye Morris, drafted all of the guys in this video. That's how they want to do it. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, hitting the subscribe button, make sure that you are around for other Kansas City Chiefs content in the future. Daily Kansas City Chiefs content here on the channel. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.